You spend 1/3 of your entire life in a state of apparent coma, motionless beneath blankets, your eyes sealed shut, your body surrendered to darkness. 8 hours a day, every day, you are seemingly doing nothing, an unproductive void in the relentless march toward your goals. But Wallace Wattles, the forgotten architect of prosperity consciousness, revealed something that should shake you to your core. This period of dormancy, this nightly descent into unconsciousness, is actually the only time your direct connection to infinite intelligence operates completely unhindered by the doubts, fears, and limiting beliefs that plague your waking hours. While you believe you are absent from the field of creation, you are in fact standing at its very epicenter. And what you do not yet understand is that you have been using this power every single night of your life, most often, tragically, to create the very poverty and limitation you consciously claim to despise. Consider for a moment the exhausting futility of your daytime efforts to manifest wealth, and ask yourself this penetrating question: why is it so devastatingly difficult to become rich simply by thinking about riches during your conscious hours? You visualize abundance while sitting at your desk. You recite affirmations while driving to a job you resent. You attempt to hold the image of financial freedom while your eyes scan bills and your ears absorb bad news. The answer Wattles provides cuts through every mystical pretense. Your conscious mind is a relentless guard dog, bred and trained by years of conditioning to protect you from disappointment by questioning every audacious thought that enters your awareness. It analyzes the probability of your success and finds it lacking. It cross-references your desire against your current bank balance and declares a mismatch. It remembers every past failure and projects that pattern onto every future attempt. This is not merely pessimism. This is the fundamental friction of consciousness itself. The conscious mind, with all its logical faculties and protective mechanisms, creates a resistance so powerful that your thoughts of wealth are like seeds thrown onto concrete. They cannot penetrate, they cannot take root. They simply lie there exposed until they wither in the harsh light of reality. Wattles understood with crystalline clarity that to accelerate the creation of wealth, to unlock what he called the law of speed in manifestation, you must bypass the guard dog entirely, and nature has provided you with an 8-hour window every single night to do exactly that. The concept of speed in the universe, as Wattles articulated it, has nothing to do with frantic action or hurried desperation. It is not about working harder or sleeping less or pushing yourself to the edge of collapse. True speed in creation is the natural result of removing resistance, of clearing the channel between your desire and the formless substance that shapes reality according to the impressions it receives. Think of electricity flowing through a wire. The speed of transmission is not increased by forcing more current through a corroded connection, but by eliminating the corrosion itself so that the energy flows unimpeded at its natural velocity. Tonight, if you can set aside your skepticism for just a few moments, you will learn how to transform your 8 hours of sleep from wasted time into your most productive work. More productive, in fact, than any action you could take in the physical world. You will learn what I call the sleep command, a specific, precise application of Wattles' principles that allows you to impress the formless substance with your desires at the exact moment when your internal resistance drops to zero, when the guard dog finally lies down, when the gate between your individual mind and the universal mind swings open without obstacle. This is not a metaphor, and this is not a gentle suggestion for those interested in self-improvement. This is a law of mind as reliable as the law of gravity is a law of matter, and your ignorance of it does not exempt you from its operation. Every night, as you drift into unconsciousness, you are issuing commands to the creative forces of the universe, commands that will be executed with perfect fidelity while you sleep, and that will manifest as the circumstances, opportunities, and limitations you encounter when you wake. The tragedy is that most people issue these commands unconsciously, allowing their last waking thoughts to be dominated by worry, resentment, fear, or the mental replay of everything that went wrong that day. They are using the sleep command destructively, programming 8 hours of creative activity to produce more of what they do not want. But you, starting tonight, can seize control of this process. You can become deliberate. You can learn to use the twilight moment between waking and sleeping to plant a single powerful seed in the most fertile soil in all of creation. The masters of wealth throughout history, whether they articulated it in Wattles's language or not, have always understood this principle, that the night is not a cessation of work but a transition to a different kind of work, invisible yet infinitely more powerful. While your competitors exhaust themselves with 16 hours of physical effort and then undo it all with 8 hours of unconscious negative programming, you will master the night. And in mastering the night, you will discover that the day begins to obey you. Your actions will become inspired rather than desperate. Opportunities will appear with suspicious timing. Solutions to impossible problems will arrive in your awareness like gifts from an unseen benefactor. This is not magic, this is mechanics. This is the law of speed in operation, and Wattles left you the instruction manual. But I must offer you a warning, and it must be unambiguous. This knowledge comes with responsibility, and responsibility comes with the requirement of application. You cannot hoard this wisdom as a curiosity. You cannot file it away under interesting ideas I'll try someday. The universe is not waiting for your permission or your convenience. It is responding to your mental impressions right now, tonight, whether you direct them consciously or allow them to form by default. The question before you is not whether you will use the sleep command, you already are using it every single night, but whether you will use it with intention or continue to use it in ignorance, continuing to create the very circumstances you claim to want to escape. To understand why the sleep command works with such devastating efficiency, you must first grasp the architecture of your own consciousness, the two-part system that Wattles and other masters of mental science have described with various terms but identical meaning. There is the conscious mind, the part of you that is reading these words right now, the analytical, logical, decision-making faculty that you identify as yourself. And then there is the subconscious mind, which Wattles often referred to as your direct connection to the formless substance, the thinking stuff of the universe that responds to impressions and translates them into physical reality. These are not merely poetic descriptions. They represent an actual functional division in the way your mind operates. And understanding this division is absolutely critical because it reveals why your daytime efforts to change your life so often end in exhaustion and disappointment. The conscious mind impresses, the subconscious mind expresses. Your conscious thought creates the blueprint, and your subconscious connection to universal creative power executes that blueprint without question, without judgment, without concern for whether the blueprint leads to your prosperity or your ruin. This relationship is not democratic and it is not negotiable. You cannot convince your subconscious mind to ignore a deeply impressed thought any more than you can convince your heart to stop beating by simply deciding it should. The subconscious operates below the threshold of your voluntary control, which is precisely why it is so powerful and why it must be approached with respect and precision rather than casual hope. When Wattles speaks of impressing the formless substance with your desires, he is describing a technical process. You must somehow bypass the interference of your conscious doubt and skepticism to plant your desired outcome directly into the subconscious soil where it can grow without obstruction. During your waking hours, this is extraordinarily difficult because your conscious mind is active, vigilant, constantly monitoring your thoughts for realism and practicality, which are simply code words for limitation. But during sleep, the conscious mind steps aside and the subconscious mind, your connection to infinite creative intelligence, remains fully operational, receptive, and responsive to whatever impression dominated your awareness as you crossed the threshold into unconsciousness. Think of your conscious mind as the architect who draws the plans, and your subconscious mind as the construction crew that builds whatever structure those plans specify. The architect can change his mind, erase lines, second-guess proportions, worry about costs, and abandon the project entirely out of fear that it cannot be done. But once the plans are handed to the construction crew with clarity and conviction, the crew simply builds. They do not debate, they do not doubt, they do not question whether the building should exist. They follow the blueprint with perfect fidelity. This is why your life is an exact reflection of your dominant mental impressions, and why you cannot lie to yourself about what those impressions truly are. You may consciously say you desire wealth while subconsciously holding images of scarcity, and your subconscious, being a faithful servant, will build scarcity because that is the blueprint it receives most consistently and most emotionally. The emotion, you must understand, is the intensity of the impression. It is the depth to which the blueprint is pressed into the wax of the formless substance. Wattles was insistent on a point that many modern interpreters of his work gloss over or misunderstand. The formless substance is not selective, it is not benevolent, and it is not concerned with your happiness. It is responsive. It takes the shape of whatever thought is impressed upon it with sufficient clarity and feeling, which means it will create poverty as efficiently as it creates wealth, sickness as reliably as health, failure as readily as success. This is why he emphasized with such urgency the necessity of controlling your thinking, of maintaining a constant and unwavering focus on what you desire rather than what you fear. But how can you maintain such focus when your conscious mind is a chaos of competing thoughts, distractions, responsibilities, and conditioned reactions? How can you hold a clear image of abundance when every news broadcast speaks of recession, every bill you open reminds you of lack, every conversation with struggling friends reinforces the belief that wealth is rare and difficult? The answer is that during your waking hours, you probably cannot, at least not with the consistency required to overcome years of contrary programming. But sleep changes everything. Sleep is the great equalizer, the nightly reset, the moment when the tyranny of conscious limitation is temporarily suspended. When you enter sleep, you do not cease to exist. You shift from one mode of consciousness to another, from the realm of logic and limitation to the realm of pure creative potential. Your subconscious mind does not sleep. It remains active throughout the night, processing, organizing, consolidating, and most importantly, remaining in continuous contact with the formless substance, receiving and transmitting impressions. This is not mystical speculation. This is observable fact that modern neuroscience has merely confirmed rather than discovered. The question that should now be burning in your awareness is this: if your subconscious remains active and connected to creative power all night long, what is it working on? What blueprint is it following while you lie unconscious? The answer is both simple and terrifying. It is working on whatever thought dominated your mind as you fell asleep. Most people surrender this incredible power to randomness. They fall asleep while watching television, their minds cluttered with violence, drama, and artificial problems. They fall asleep replaying arguments, rehearsing resentments, worrying about money, imagining worst-case scenarios. They fall asleep in a state of mental exhaustion, which means they are handing the blueprint to their subconscious in a condition of chaos, and then they wonder why their lives feel chaotic. Or worse, they fall asleep in a state of resignation, a kind of grey neutrality that says, "Nothing I do matters anyway," and that resignation becomes the dominant impression, the command that echoes through 8 hours of subconscious activity. Wattles saw this pattern with painful clarity in the lives of struggling people around him, and he recognized it as the hidden mechanism of perpetual poverty, not a lack of opportunity, not a lack of intelligence, but a nightly reinforcement of limitation through the unconscious misuse of the sleep command. The wealthy, by contrast, whether through instinct or instruction, have always protected their mental state before sleep, ensuring that the last thought impressed upon the subconscious is one of confidence, gratitude, and desired outcome already achieved. You have been given two minds, not as some cruel joke of nature, but as a sophisticated system for translating desire into reality. The conscious mind is your creative faculty, the part that can imagine what does not yet exist. And the subconscious mind is your executive faculty, the part that harnesses universal power to bring that imagination into physical form. But this system only works when you understand the proper relationship between these two parts. The conscious impresses, the subconscious expresses. You do not need to understand how the subconscious accomplishes its work, any more than you need to understand digestion to benefit from eating food. You need only to learn how to deliver a clear impression, and the time when such an impression can be delivered with the least resistance and the greatest impact is the moment just before sleep. That liminal state Wattles identified as the gateway between your individual mind and the universal mind. If you can master what happens in that moment, you will master what happens in your life, because you will be directing 8 hours of creative activity instead of allowing 8 hours of destructive or neutral activity to unfold by default. The tragedy of the average person's life is not that they lack access to this power. Everyone has equal access because the formless substance is everywhere and always responsive, but that they do not understand the mechanism of access. They try to force results through willpower during the day, grinding against resistance, exhausting themselves in physical action while simultaneously undermining that action with mental impressions of doubt and fear. Then at night, when the door to true creative power stands wide open, they walk through it unconsciously, with no deliberate thought, no controlled impression, no awareness that they are issuing commands to the universe that will be executed with perfect precision. This is the fundamental error Wattles sought to correct, and the sleep command is the specific technique by which you correct it in your own life, starting tonight. Now we must address the logic that makes this technique not merely possible, but inevitable in its operation. And that logic rests on a principle Wattles articulated with scientific precision. There is a specific window of time, a gap in consciousness, where the formless substance is most receptive to your impression, and that window opens just before sleep. Science has given this state a clinical name, the hypnagogic state, but Wattles, writing decades before neuroscience could measure brainwaves, called it the point of transmission. This is not the same as being fully asleep, and it is not the same as being fully awake. It is the twilight zone between waking and sleeping, that strange few minutes where your thoughts become dreamlike, where logic loosens its grip, where images float through your mind with a fluidity they never possessed during full consciousness. In this state, your brain begins producing theta waves, a slower frequency associated with deep relaxation, creativity, and heightened suggestibility. And what this means in practical terms is that the guard dog of your conscious mind is lying down, half asleep itself, no longer vigilantly challenging every thought that passes through. This is the moment of maximum opportunity, the crack in the armor of your own resistance, and Wattles understood that whatever thought rules your mind in this final minute before you lose consciousness becomes the dominant command that your subconscious obeys for the next 8 hours. Not the thought you had an hour ago, not the affirmation you recited mechanically while brushing your teeth, but the actual thought-feeling combination that occupies your awareness as you cross the threshold. That is the blueprint that gets pressed into the formless substance with the weight of your entire being. This is why two people can perform identical visualization exercises during the day and get wildly different results. The one who carries that visualization into the hypnagogic state is impressing it at depth, at the level where the subconscious takes instruction, while the one who abandons it to worry or distraction is impressing worry and distraction instead. The conscious practice during the day is useful, even necessary, but it is preparatory. The real work happens in the gap. You must understand that the formless substance in Wattles' framework is not a distant entity you must petition or persuade. It is the fundamental medium of reality itself, the thinking stuff, from which all material forms arise and into which they all dissolve. It is infinitely moldable, responsive to thought in the same way that clay is responsive to pressure, and it holds the shape of whatever impression is placed upon it until a different impression replaces it. This is not a belief system. This is the mechanical explanation for why your persistent thoughts eventually manifest as persistent conditions. During waking hours, you are constantly impressing the formless substance with scattered, contradictory thoughts. I want money, followed immediately by, I can't afford this, followed by, maybe someday, followed by, who am I kidding? These impressions cancel each other out, leaving no clear shape for the formless substance to solidify. But when you enter the hypnagogic state with a single, clear, emotionally charged image of your desire already fulfilled, that impression goes in clean, deep, and unopposed by contradiction. The power of this moment is amplified by the fact that as you drift into sleep, your sense of separation from the universal whole begins to dissolve. Your individual identity, with all its limitations and labels, starts to blur, and for those few minutes, You are closer to the truth of your nature, pure consciousness connected to infinite creative intelligence than you are at any other time in your 24-hour cycle. This is why insights come in the shower, why solutions appear in dreams, why the phrase "sleep on it" carries ancient wisdom. The subconscious has access to knowledge and creative capacity that the conscious mind, with all its anxious self-awareness, actively blocks. Wattles called this the connection to infinite intelligence, and he insisted that this connection is never severed, only obscured by the noise and resistance of waking consciousness. Sleep removes the noise, and the hypnagogic state is the transition point where you can still consciously choose what signal to send before the noise disappears entirely. Consider the mechanics more carefully. If the formless substance is most receptive to impression when your conscious resistance is lowest, and if your conscious resistance is lowest in the moments before sleep, then it follows with mathematical certainty that the most efficient time to impress your desires is precisely then, not at any other time. You could visualize for hours during the day, but if those hours are punctuated by doubt, distraction, and the constant need to answer phones, check emails, and navigate the demands of physical existence, your impression will be shallow and fragmented. 15 seconds of focused impression in the hypnagogic state will penetrate deeper than 15 hours of distracted daytime visualization, because depth of impression is determined not by duration, but by the absence of resistance at the moment of impression. This is the law of speed as Wattles understood it. You accelerate manifestation, not by adding more effort, but by removing more resistance, and there is no time when resistance is lower than the moment just before sleep. The gap between waking and sleeping is also the moment when your emotional guard is down, when you can actually feel the reality of your desire without the immediate contradiction of external circumstances. During the day, when you visualize wealth, your eyes can simultaneously see your shabby surroundings, your ears can hear the noise of struggle, and your conscious mind helpfully reminds you of the distance between vision and reality. But in the twilight state, there are no external references. Your eyes are closed, your body is still, the world has receded, and for a few precious moments, your inner experience is your only experience. If in that moment you are experiencing the feeling of your wish fulfilled, the relief, the gratitude, the quiet satisfaction of already having what you desire, then that feeling impresses itself without competition, without argument, without the yes, but of the conscious mind. This is not self-deception, this is strategic impression. You are not denying reality, you are choosing which reality to impress upon the creative medium that will shape tomorrow's circumstances. Wattles was emphatic that the thinking stuff is in a constant state of flux, always taking new form according to the thoughts held in contact with it, and this means that no condition is permanent, no situation is hopeless, no pattern is unbreakable, unless you continue to impress that condition, situation, or pattern night after night through unconscious use of the sleep command. The poverty you see around you, the limitation you experience, the opportunities that pass you by, these are not punishments from an unjust universe. They are the materialized forms of yesterday's mental impressions, and those impressions were most powerfully delivered in the moments before you lost consciousness. If those moments were dominated by fear, by worry, by mental rehearsal of everything going wrong, then fear and worry are what the formless substance received as its instruction, and it has spent the night and the following day arranging circumstances to match that instruction. This is the unshakable logic Wattles presents. The universe is not broken. Your mind is simply being used against you through ignorance of its operation. The point of transmission, the hypnagogic state, is nature's gift to you, a built-in mechanism for reprogramming your destiny every single night. But like any mechanism, it operates according to law, not according to wishful thinking. You cannot approach it casually, you cannot approach it occasionally, and you cannot approach it while simultaneously clutching onto the very thoughts and feelings that have been creating the life you claim to want to escape. The gap is there, the door is open, the formless substance is waiting. But you must walk through that door with something specific to impress, something clear, something felt, something that represents the life you are determined to create rather than the life you are resigning yourself to endure. Tonight, when your head touches the pillow and your eyes close, You will stand at the point of transmission whether you are aware of it or not. The only question is whether you will use it deliberately or waste it unconsciously, as you have wasted it every night until now. The first step in mastering the sleep command is what must be called the digital detox, though Wattles would have termed it the purification of mental atmosphere. And it is non-negotiable if you intend to impress the formless substance with any clarity whatsoever. You cannot plant a seed in soil choked with weeds and expect it to grow. And you cannot impress a clear, powerful image onto your subconscious if your mind is cluttered with what must be bluntly called mental garbage. The endless stream of news, social media, text messages, emails, and digital noise that bombards your consciousness every waking moment and continues for most people right up until the moment they close their eyes. This is not a moral judgment about technology. This is a practical observation about how impression works. Every image you see, every word you read, every emotion you absorb from a screen creates a ripple in your mental pond. And if you allow those ripples to continue up until the moment of sleep, you will carry chaos rather than clarity into the hypnagogic state. And chaos is what your subconscious will work with all night long. The conscious mind, as we have established, is a guard dog bred to protect you from threats, and it has been trained by modern life to perceive threats everywhere, in news of economic collapse, in social media comparisons that highlight your inadequacy, in messages from people who want something from you, in notifications that trigger anxiety about what you might be missing. Each of these micro-threats activates a stress response, however subtle, and stress is the opposite of the receptive, relaxed state required for deep impression. When you scroll through your phone in bed, you are essentially teaching your guard dog to bark louder, to become more vigilant, to scan for danger even as you try to drift into sleep. Then you wonder why you cannot quiet your mind, why worry follows you into unconsciousness, why you wake up tired despite 8 hours of sleep. The answer is simple. You never gave your conscious mind permission to stand down. You never signaled that the day is over and protection is no longer required, and so it continues its anxious patrol all night, disrupting the very process that could set you free. Wattles insisted on the principle of mental discipline, not as asceticism but as strategy, and the 30 minutes before sleep must be treated as sacred time, as the preparation period for your most important work. This means no television, no phone, no computer, no news. Nothing that introduces external images or ideas that you did not consciously choose. This is difficult for most people because they have become addicted to distraction, using digital stimulation to avoid being alone with their own thoughts. But that avoidance is precisely the problem. If you cannot be alone with your own thoughts for 30 minutes, if you cannot sit in silence without reaching for a screen, then you have lost control of your own mind, and a mind you do not control cannot be used to command the formless substance. The purification is not about deprivation. It is about reclaiming sovereignty over your own consciousness so that when you enter the point of transmission, the only impression present is the one you deliberately choose to carry with you. During these 30 minutes, your task is to quiet the guard dog, to allow the barking to fade, to let the mental chatter settle like sediment falling to the bottom of a glass. This happens naturally when you withdraw stimulation, but you can accelerate it through simple practices. Slow, deep breathing to signal safety to your nervous system, gentle movement to release physical tension, perhaps reading something aligned with your desired state, not as study, but as gentle reinforcement of the mental atmosphere you wish to create. Some people find that writing their worries onto paper and physically setting them aside helps to externalize anxieties that would otherwise circle through their minds. Others prefer silence and stillness. The method matters less than the result. By the time you lie down to sleep, your mind should feel spacious, quiet, receptive, not because you have forced it into submission, but because you have removed the stimulation that kept it agitated. This purification creates the necessary condition for the second step, but it also serves another purpose that Wattles would recognize immediately. It trains you in the art of mental discipline, which is the foundation of all wealth creation. A person who cannot control what enters their mind for 30 minutes before sleep cannot control their financial decisions, cannot resist impulse purchases, cannot maintain focus on long-term goals, cannot ignore the opinions of those who would discourage their ambitions. The inability to observe a simple digital detox is not a minor character flaw. It is a symptom of mental weakness that will sabotage every attempt at prosperity. When you prove to yourself night after night that you can command your attention, that you can choose silence over stimulation, that you can protect your mental space from invasion, you are not merely preparing for sleep, you are developing the inner authority required to command external circumstances. This is why Wattles placed so much emphasis on disciplined thinking. He understood that thought is the only tool you truly possess, and a tool you cannot control is worse than useless because it will be used against you by every force that seeks to keep you limited, distracted, and dependent. The resistance you feel to this first step is diagnostic. If the idea of 30 minutes without a screen fills you with anxiety or seems impossible, that feeling is precisely the evidence that you need this practice more than you realize. The resistance is your addiction to mental noise speaking, and addiction thrives in ignorance and justification. You will tell yourself that checking one last email is harmless, that scrolling through social media is how you relax, that you need to watch the news to stay informed. These are the lies of a mind that has been captured by distraction, and they will continue to imprison you until you recognize them as lies. The truth is that nothing that happens in the digital world in the 30 minutes before you sleep is more important than the impression you are about to deliver to the formless substance that shapes your entire life. No email, no text, no news story, no social media post carries even a fraction of the significance of the command you are about to issue to your subconscious, and anyone who cannot prioritize accordingly will remain poor in spirit if not in fact. The purification is also a demonstration of faith, though Wattles would be careful to distinguish faith from blind belief. When you turn off all devices and create a buffer of silence before sleep, you are making a statement. I trust that my conscious manipulation of mental images is more powerful than passive consumption of external stimuli. I trust that what I choose to think about is more important than what the world wants me to think about. I trust that the sleep command works, and I am willing to create the conditions for it to work. This is active faith, faith demonstrated through action, and it is the kind of faith that moves the formless substance. Wattles had no patience for people who claimed to believe in mental science while refusing to apply its principles. He understood that belief without application is not faith at all, but intellectual entertainment that changes nothing. The digital detox is where you prove, first to yourself and then to the universe, that you are serious, that you are willing to break comfortable habits, that you understand the stakes. You will notice, if you maintain this practice consistently for even a week, that your sleep becomes deeper, your dreams become more vivid, and your waking state becomes more energized. This is not coincidental. You are allowing your nervous system to complete its natural cycle of activation and recovery, instead of forcing it to remain in low-level stress mode until the moment of unconsciousness. But more importantly, you are clearing the channel for pure impression, and a clear channel allows the sleep command to reach depths that a cluttered mind can never access. When your last waking moments are spent in deliberate focus on your desired outcome rather than scattered reaction to external stimuli, the subconscious receives a coherent signal instead of static, and coherent signals produce coherent results. This is the mechanics of manifestation stripped of all mysticism. Clean input produces clean output, and the input is cleanest when you protect it from contamination during the critical 30 minutes before the point of transmission. If you want to accelerate your movement toward wealth, start by guarding the gateway to your subconscious with the ferocity you would use to guard your bank vault. Because in truth, this gateway is worth infinitely more than any physical vault, since it is the point where all physical wealth originates. With your mind purified and quiet, you are now prepared for the second step, which Wattles would recognize as the very heart of the technique, the creation and impression of what I call the single frame, the one specific mental image that implies your desire is already fulfilled. This is not a vague wish, not a generalized hoping, not a tentative, it would be nice if. This is a concrete, static scene, frozen in time like a photograph, that captures the moment after your desire has manifested. Most people fail at this step before they even begin, because they bring to it the same diffuse, unfocused thinking they bring to everything else, and diffuse thinking produces diffuse results, which is to say, no results at all. Wattles was absolutely clear on this point. The formless substance responds to definite impressions, not to vague longings, and the difference between definite and vague is the difference between wealth and poverty, between manifestation and perpetual waiting. You must have a single scene, and that scene must be so specific that you could describe it to another person in precise detail. The construction of this single frame requires you to answer a question that most people have never genuinely asked themselves. What would my life look like if my current desire were already realized? And what single moment could I capture that would undeniably prove to me that this realization has occurred? Not the process of achieving it, not the steps you will take to get there, not the work or luck or timing required. None of that belongs in the frame. You are not visualizing the journey. You are visualizing the destination already reached. If your desire is wealth, the frame is not you working hard to earn money. It is you standing in your new home, or signing the papers on a paid-off property, or checking your bank statement and seeing the specific number you have decided upon, or shaking hands with a business partner after closing a lucrative deal. The scene must imply completion, must carry the feeling of "it is done," because that is the only impression that overrides the current reality of "it is not yet." This is where most people's thinking becomes infected with doubt, disguised as practicality. They begin constructing their single frame, and immediately the conscious mind interrupts. But how will this happen? Where will the money come from? What are the steps? Isn't this unrealistic given my current situation? These questions, which seem reasonable, are actually the guard dog waking up and attempting to reassert control, and if you allow them to continue, you will never create a clean impression. Wattles anticipated this problem and offered a solution that seems radical only because it contradicts everything you have been taught. Do not concern yourself with the how. The how is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to impress the what, and to impress it with such clarity and feeling that the subconscious accepts it as instruction. The subconscious, in connection with infinite intelligence, has access to means and methods that your conscious mind cannot imagine, and when you attempt to figure out the how, you are limiting the universe to pathways your limited experience can conceive, which guarantees you will only create more of what you already have. The single frame must be constructed from the end, from the moment of fulfillment, and it must engage more than just your visual sense. Yes, you see the scene, the room you are standing in, the papers in your hand, the smile on your face, but you must also include the kinesthetic feeling of that moment, the emotional tone, the physical sensations. What does it feel like in your body to know with absolute certainty that your financial problems are solved? What does relief feel like? What does security feel like? What does the quiet confidence of abundance feel like in your chest, in your breathing, in the relaxation of muscles that have been clenched with worry for years? These feelings are not decorative, they are structural. Emotion is the language the subconscious understands most fluently, and a mental image without emotion is like a blueprint drawn in invisible ink, technically present but functionally useless. When Wattles speaks of impressing the formless substance with feeling, he is not being poetic. He is describing the actual mechanism by which thought becomes thing. The selection of your single frame should be done with care, ideally during the purification period before sleep, though once established, the same frame can be used night after night until the manifestation occurs. Some teachers of visualization advocate for elaborate mental movies, complex narratives, multiple scenes, but Wattles' approach, properly understood, is simpler and therefore more powerful. One scene held steady, felt deeply. Simplicity eliminates confusion. Simplicity allows for effortless repetition. Simplicity ensures that when you enter the hypnagogic state, you are not trying to remember a complicated sequence, but are simply returning to a familiar place, a single mental location where your desire already exists. Think of it as your destination, the place you visit every night before sleep, the reality you inhabit for a few moments before unconsciousness takes you deeper. The more familiar this place becomes, the more real it feels. And the more real it feels, the more powerfully it impresses itself onto the formless substance. There is a subtlety here that separates those who succeed with this technique from those who abandon it after a few half-hearted attempts. The single frame must feel natural to you, must be something you can inhabit without strain. If you choose a scene that feels forced, that triggers immediate disbelief, that makes you feel like an imposter even in your own visualization, then you have chosen poorly. This does not mean you must limit your desires to what seems realistic by current standards. Wattles would never counsel such limitation, but it does mean that the scene you construct must be one you can enter with a sense of, yes, this is mine, this belongs to me, this is what I am moving toward. Some people find it helpful to begin with a scene that is only slightly beyond their current circumstances, and then, once that manifests, upgrade to a more expansive scene. Others can leap immediately to their ultimate desire. The key is that the scene must generate the feeling of fulfillment, not the feeling of desperate reaching, because the subconscious responds to the feeling more than to the content. The purpose of the single frame is not to entertain yourself with pleasant fantasies. It is to create a new dominant impression that will replace the old dominant impression that has been creating your current circumstances. Most people's dominant impression is one of lack, struggle, limitation, and anxiety about money. And this impression has been reinforced daily for years or decades, which means it has created deep grooves in the formless substance, well-worn patterns that manifest automatically. To override this, you need a new impression delivered with consistency and intensity, and the single frame is the tool for that delivery. Every night, you return to this scene, you feel it again, you let it be the last thing in your awareness before sleep, and slowly, or sometimes suddenly, the new impression begins to dominate, the old patterns begin to weaken, and the circumstances of your life begin to shift in ways that seem miraculous, but are actually mechanical. This is not magic. This is the law of mental impression, operating exactly as Wattles described it. You will know your single frame is properly constructed when returning to it brings a sense of peace, of rightness, of coming home. It should not feel like work to hold this image. It should feel like relief. If it feels like effort, if you are straining to maintain it, if doubt floods in the moment your focus wavers, then you need to adjust the scene until you find the version that feels true, that resonates with something deep inside you, that recognizes this future as your birthright, rather than as a lucky accident you are hoping might happen. Wattles taught that the universe is abundant, that there is enough for everyone, that you are not taking from others by claiming your share, and your single frame should reflect this understanding. It should show you receiving, not stealing. It should show you grateful, not guilty. It should show you in your power, not in your need. The frame is both a prediction and a command, a declaration of what is coming, and an instruction to the formless substance to begin arranging the circumstances that will make it so. Now we must address the most common and most devastating mistake people make when attempting to use the sleep command, an error so prevalent that it accounts for the vast majority of failures and explains why most people live lives of quiet desperation despite having access to the same mental laws that create fortunes. They take worry to bed with them. They perform all the right steps. They turn off their devices, they create their single frame, they lie down with good intentions, and then, in the critical moments before sleep, they allow their minds to drift back into the familiar territory of fear, replaying the day's problems, rehearsing tomorrow's anxieties, running mental calculations of insufficient funds, imagining conversations with creditors, reviewing the long list of everything that is wrong and broken and lacking. This is not a neutral mistake, not a minor lapse that simply reduces the technique's effectiveness. This is the active use of the sleep command to create more of what you do not want, and Wattles recognized it as the root cause of persistent poverty in people who otherwise possess intelligence, ambition, and opportunity. When you fall asleep while worrying about debt, you are issuing a clear command to the formless substance. Create more circumstances that give me reason to worry about debt. When you drift into unconsciousness while feeling anxious about your inadequate income, you are impressing that inadequacy onto the subconscious with the full weight of emotion, which means you are programming 8 hours of creative activity to reinforce and expand the very condition you consciously claim to hate. The subconscious does not recognize sarcasm, does not understand that you are worrying because you want the opposite. does not differentiate between attention given in desire and attention given in fear. It only recognizes the dominant impression, the thought-feeling combination that occupies your awareness as you cross the threshold into sleep. And it goes to work manifesting whatever that impression represents. This is why two people with identical financial circumstances can have radically different trajectories. One uses the sleep command to impress abundance, the other uses it to impress lack, and the formless substance, being impersonal and mechanical, delivers to each exactly what they have ordered. Most people have been taking worry to bed for so long that they do not even recognize it as a choice. It has become a habit, an automatic mental routine that feels necessary and responsible. They believe that worrying about problems is how you solve problems, that anxiety about money is a sign of maturity and realism, that rehearsing worst-case scenarios is prudent preparation. But Wattles strips away these comfortable delusions and reveals the truth. Worry is not problem-solving, it is problem creation. Worry does not prepare you for disaster. It attracts disaster by impressing disaster onto the creative medium of the universe. When you worry, you are not being realistic. You are being an artist, painting a picture of what you do not want with such vivid detail and emotional intensity that the formless substance has no choice but to solidify that picture into circumstance. And when you do this in the moments before sleep, when your conscious resistance is fading and the subconscious is most receptive, you are using the most powerful moment in your entire day to guarantee that tomorrow will be worse than today. The mechanism is simple but unforgiving. The subconscious does not distinguish between imagination and reality, between what you fear and what you desire, between what you are moving toward and what you are trying to escape. It only responds to the clarity and emotional intensity of the impression it receives. When you worry intensely about losing your job, your subconscious receives an impression of job loss, complete with the feelings of insecurity, shame, and financial crisis, and it begins to arrange circumstances. Through your own behavior, through your subconscious communication with others, through the mysterious synchronicities that Wattles called the movement of the formless substance, that will make that impression a reality. You become irritable at work, which damages relationships. You project an energy of fear which others unconsciously pick up on and interpret as incompetence. You become so focused on what could go wrong that you miss opportunities to do things right. All of this seems like bad luck or external persecution, but it is actually the precise mechanical operation of the law of mental impression, and you are the one wielding the tool, using it to cut your own throat. Wattles observed that the poor almost universally have a habit of mental rehearsal of poverty. They lie awake calculating their debts, imagining the humiliation of bankruptcy, seeing themselves rejected and diminished, feeling the fear of homelessness or hunger. And these mental rehearsals are not harmless. They are intensely creative acts that impress lack onto the formless substance with devastating efficiency. Then these same people wonder why they cannot get ahead, why every effort seems to fail, why opportunities evaporate just before they materialize, and they blame the economy, their education, their background, or they accept poverty as their fate. They do not realize that they are using the sleep command every single night to command more poverty. And until they stop doing this, no amount of physical effort during the day will overcome the destructive programming they are delivering to their subconscious for 8 hours every night. This is the tragic irony Wattles sought to expose. People are not poor because they lack opportunity. They are poor because they are nightly artists of poverty, unconsciously but skillfully crafting the very circumstances they consciously despise. Breaking this habit requires more than good intentions. It requires vigilance and initially effort. The moment you notice your mind drifting toward worry as you lie in bed, you must make a conscious decision to redirect it. Not to suppress the worry, which only gives it more energy, but to replace it with your single frame. To deliberately return your attention to the scene of fulfillment you have constructed. This will feel unnatural at first, perhaps even irresponsible, because you have been conditioned to believe that worrying is your duty, that if you stop rehearsing problems, you are somehow ignoring reality. But the truth Wattles offers is precisely the opposite. When you worry, you are creating the reality you fear. And when you visualize fulfillment, you are creating the reality you desire. The question is not whether you are creating. You are always creating with every thought, especially the thoughts held in the hypnagogic state. The question is what you are creating. And if you are creating worry, anxiety, and mental images of failure, you are using the most powerful tool in the universe to destroy yourself. The fatal mistake, then, is not a mistake of ignorance, but a mistake of habit, and habits can be broken through consistent contrary action. Starting tonight, you will establish a new habit. If worry arises as you lie in bed, you will notice it, acknowledge it without judgment, and then gently, firmly, return to your single frame. You will do this as many times as necessary, even if it is 50 times in one night, because each time you redirect your attention from worry to your desired outcome, you are weakening the old pattern and strengthening the new one. Over time, sometimes quickly, sometimes gradually, the new pattern becomes automatic, and you will find that you can fall asleep holding the image of fulfillment as easily as you once fell asleep holding the image of lack. When this shift occurs, everything in your external life begins to shift as well, not because you have suddenly become lucky, but because you have stopped using the sleep command destructively and started using it constructively, aligned with your conscious desires rather than opposed to them. Closely related to the mistake of taking worry to bed is what must be called the how trap, and it is equally destructive because it represents the conscious mind's final attempt to sabotage the impression process just when you are on the verge of success. You have created your single frame. You are lying in bed holding the image of your desire fulfilled. You are feeling the reality of it. And then your logical mind interjects with what seems like a reasonable question. But how will this actually happen? Where will the money come from? What specific steps will lead to this outcome? The moment you engage with these questions, the moment you attempt to figure out the mechanism of manifestation, while you should be surrendering to sleep, you have re-engaged your conscious mind, you have reactivated the guard dog, and you have destroyed the receptive state required for deep impression. This is perhaps the most insidious form of self-sabotage because it masquerades as diligence, as responsible planning, as mature skepticism, when in fact it is nothing but fear dressed in the costume of rationality. Wattles was explicit on this point, though his language was different. Your job is to hold the vision and trust the process. The universe's job is to provide the means. When you attempt to figure out how your desire will manifest, you are essentially telling infinite intelligence that you do not trust it to find a way, that your limited conscious understanding of possibility is superior to the unlimited creative capacity of the formless substance. This is not humility. This is arrogance. It is the arrogance of the finite mind, claiming that if it cannot see a path, no path exists. And this arrogance is what keeps millions of people trapped in circumstances far below their potential. The how will reveal itself through intuition, through opportunity, through synchronicity, but only after you have impressed the what deeply enough that the subconscious accepts it as instruction and begins to mobilize resources you did not know existed. If you demand to know the how before you will commit to the impression, you will never receive the how because you have short-circuited the process at its inception. The trap is particularly seductive at night because the hypnagogic state, while ideal for impression, also makes logical thinking feel suddenly important and urgent. As you drift towards sleep, holding your single frame, your mind may suddenly flood with seemingly practical concerns. I need to call this person tomorrow. I should update my resume. Maybe I should take a different job. What if I apply for a loan? These are not insights. These are the death throes of the conscious mind trying to maintain control, trying to keep you in the realm of limited, mechanical action where it understands the rules. If you follow these thoughts, if you start planning and strategizing instead of simply holding your image and feeling your feeling, you will spend your pre-sleep moments in mental effort rather than mental receptivity. And effort is the opposite of what this process requires. The sleep command works through surrender, not through striving, and the how question is a refusal to surrender, a demand to maintain conscious control, even in the moment when conscious control must be released. Wattles taught that the universe is intelligent, far more intelligent than any individual consciousness, and that it will always find the shortest, most efficient path to manifest your impressed desire. but only if you do not interfere with your own limiting beliefs about what is possible. When you ask how, you are implicitly asking, how within the constraints of what I currently know and believe, and those constraints are precisely what have kept you limited up until now. The universe does not operate within your constraints. It operates according to laws you may not understand, utilizing coincidences that seem impossible, arranging meetings that appear random, opening doors you did not know existed, but it can only do this if you give it clear instruction, the what, and then step aside. Sleep is the ultimate stepping aside, the nightly abdication of conscious control. And if you spend the moments before sleep trying to retain control by figuring out the how, you are negating the very power you are trying to access. This is why Wattles insisted that sleep is for trust, not for strategy. Strategy belongs to the daylight hours, when you take inspired action on the opportunities that have appeared, but the creation of those opportunities happens in the invisible realm of the subconscious, and that realm only opens when you trust enough to stop trying to manage the process. Trust does not mean passivity during the day. Wattles was clear that action is required, but it does mean complete surrender at night, a willingness to release all planning, all figuring, all attempts to control outcomes, and simply hold the image of the end result while allowing sleep to take you. If you cannot do this, if you cannot go to bed with your vision and nothing else, then you do not yet trust the process, and without trust, the process cannot work because you are constantly interrupting it with doubt disguised as practical thinking. The how trap is also dangerous because it creates a subtle form of bargaining with the universe. People will hold their single frame and simultaneously think, okay, if I do X and Y, then maybe Z will happen, and that could lead to my desire. This is not commanding the formless substance. This is negotiating with it, and negotiation implies doubt about whether the outcome can occur without your conscious manipulation. The formless substance does not negotiate. It does not need your help. It does not require your strategic input. It only requires your clear, emotionally charged impression of what you want, delivered at depth through the hypnagogic state, and then it goes to work using means that will surprise you, delight you, and often humble you with their elegance and efficiency. But you will never experience this if you insist on being the architect and the builder simultaneously. If you refuse to simply be the architect, the one who provides the vision, and let the subconscious be the builder. Breaking free of the how trap requires a decision, and the decision must be made consciously during your waking hours so that it is already in place when you lie down to sleep. I will impress the end result. I will not concern myself with the means. I will trust that the how will be revealed through inspiration and opportunity. I release the need to control the process, and I accept that my conscious mind cannot conceive of all possible paths. My job is to see it done. The universe's job is to make it so. This decision held firmly allows you to enter the pre-sleep state with a single focus, your single frame, rather than with the divided mind that tries to visualize success while simultaneously calculating probability. And when you fall asleep with this single focus, when the last thing in your awareness is the feeling of your wish fulfilled, rather than the strategizing of how it might be fulfilled, you have delivered to your subconscious a clean command. And clean commands produce results that messy, conflicted, doubt-laden commands never can. Now we must bridge the gap between Wattles' 1910 insights and the scientific discoveries that have emerged in the century since he wrote, not because his principles require validation from modern science. They stand on their own observable results. But because for the skeptical modern mind, the confirmation of neuroscience can dissolve the final barriers of disbelief that prevent full commitment to the technique. Wattles did not have access to electroencephalograms, functional MRIs, or sleep laboratories, yet he described with uncanny accuracy what scientists would later discover about the brain's activity during sleep, particularly during the phase known as REM, rapid eye movement, sleep. We now know through thousands of studies that during REM sleep, which occupies roughly 2 hours of your 8-hour rest period, the brain is not dormant but intensely active, processing the day's experiences, consolidating memories, making connections between disparate pieces of information, and solving problems using neural pathways that are largely inactive during waking consciousness. This is not mysticism. This is measurable, repeatable, documented fact. The brain during REM sleep operates in what neuroscientists call a state of hyperassociativity, meaning that regions which normally do not communicate are suddenly in conversation with each other, creating novel connections and insights that the more rigid, linear thinking of waking consciousness would never produce. This is why solutions to seemingly impossible problems often appear in dreams, why artists and inventors throughout history have credited their breakthroughs to nocturnal inspiration, and why the phrase "sleep on it" reflects a folk wisdom that predates scientific understanding, but captures a genuine truth. When Wattles spoke of the subconscious mind's connection to infinite intelligence, he was describing, in the language available to him, this very process. The activation of mental capacities that transcend ordinary logical thinking and access what might be called creative intelligence, the ability to see solutions that do not yet exist within the framework of known possibilities. Modern neuroscience has simply given us different vocabulary for the same phenomenon, confirming that sleep is not a passive state, but an active, creative state of immense power. What makes this particularly relevant to the sleep command is the discovery that the brain does not merely process random information during sleep. It prioritizes whatever was emotionally significant to you during the waking hours, and especially whatever occupied your mind in the moments before sleep. This is called overnight memory consolidation, and it explains why students who study before bed perform better on tests than students who study at other times, why trauma victims often have nightmares about their traumatic experiences, and why you wake up still feeling angry if you went to bed angry. The brain uses sleep to strengthen and integrate whatever neural patterns were most active before unconsciousness, which means that the thought-feeling combination you hold as you drift off becomes the focus of your brain's nocturnal work. If that thought-feeling is your single frame, your vision of fulfilled desire, then your brain will spend hours strengthening that neural pattern, making connections that support it, and priming you to recognize opportunities aligned with it when you wake. If that thought feeling is worry about debt, your brain will strengthen anxiety patterns, prime you to see threats, and essentially program you for defensive, scarcity-based behavior the next day. The research on theta brainwaves, which are dominant during the hypnagogic state, Wattles identified as the point of transmission, reveals something equally important. In the theta state, the critical faculty of the conscious mind is suppressed, which means that suggestions and impressions bypass the usual screening process and are accepted more readily by the subconscious. This is why hypnosis works in the theta state, why advertising targets relaxed, unfocused states of attention, and why the moments before sleep are uniquely powerful for self-programming. When you are in theta, your guard dog is asleep, and whatever you tell yourself in that state is taken as truth without argument. If you tell yourself, through your single frame and its associated feeling, that you are wealthy, that your life is abundant, that your desires are fulfilled, the subconscious accepts this as fact and begins to reorganize your behavior, your perceptions, and your interactions to align with this new fact. Wattles intuited this mechanism without the technology to measure it. Neuroscience has now confirmed it with precision that would have astounded him, though he would not have been surprised by the findings themselves, only by the tools used to verify what he already knew from observation and application. Perhaps the most striking validation comes from studies on what neuroscientists call targeted memory reactivation, a technique where subjects are exposed to specific cues, sounds, smells, or images associated with desired learning or behavior change, and then those cues are subtly presented during sleep to reactivate and strengthen the associated memories. Subjects who receive this targeted reactivation during sleep show significantly better retention and integration of the desired learning compared to control groups. This is essentially a mechanized, externalized version of what the sleep command does internally. You are using the pre-sleep state to tag a specific mental impression, your single frame, with emotional significance, and then during sleep, your brain naturally reactivates and strengthens that impression simply because it was the last significant thing you focused on before losing consciousness. You are not doing anything strange or unnatural. You are using a built-in biological process with intention rather than leaving it to operate by default on whatever random thoughts happen to be present. Modern research has also illuminated why the sleep command must involve feeling, not just visualization. Brain imaging studies show that the limbic system, the emotional center of the brain, remains highly active during sleep, while the prefrontal cortex, the logical, analytical region, is relatively quiet. This means that during sleep, your brain is processing emotional content more than logical content, which is why dreams are emotionally vivid even when they make no logical sense. When you combine a clear visual image, your single frame, with a strong emotional component, the feeling of wish fulfilled, you are creating the exact type of impression that the sleeping brain is designed to process and integrate. Visual imagery alone would be weak, like a blueprint without specifications. Feeling alone would be unfocused, like specifications without a blueprint. Together, they form a complete instruction that the brain, and by extension the subconscious mind Wattles described, can execute with clarity. This is not poetry. This is the optimal use of your brain's natural architecture for change. The scientific understanding of sleep's role in emotional regulation also explains why taking worry to bed is so destructive. When you fall asleep in a state of anxiety or fear, your brain spends the night strengthening anxiety pathways, which is why you often wake up feeling even more anxious than you did the night before, even though nothing happened during sleep. The brain has been working all night to consolidate that anxiety, to make it more automatic, to wire it deeper into your nervous system. Over time, this nightly reinforcement creates what psychologists call trait anxiety, a baseline state of worry that colors every perception and decision, making it nearly impossible to take the bold actions required for wealth creation. Wattles did not know about neural plasticity or the amygdala's role in fear conditioning, but he observed the results clearly enough. People who worry at night stay poor, and people who maintain emotional control before sleep tend to prosper. Science has simply revealed the mechanism underlying the observation. The concept of infinite intelligence that Wattles referenced can now be understood, at least partially, through the lens of what neuroscientists call the default mode network, a collection of brain regions that become active when you are not focused on external tasks, including during sleep and deep rest. This network is associated with creative thinking, future planning, and what some researchers call transcendent or spiritual experiences of interconnectedness. When the default mode network is active, the brain is not constrained by immediate sensory input or logical problem solving. It can explore possibilities, imagine futures, and make intuitive leaps that seem to come from nowhere. While Wattles might have described this as the subconscious accessing infinite intelligence, neuroscience describes it as the brain's network for creative cognition operating without the constraints of task-focused attention. The terminology differs, but the function is the same. During sleep, you have access to mental capacities that waking consciousness suppresses, and these capacities can provide solutions, insights, and guidance that seem miraculous, but are actually the natural product of your brain operating in its unrestricted creative mode. The practical implication of this scientific validation is what Wattles would have called the morning download, though in his time he might have termed it the inspiration that follows faithful practice. The result of using the sleep command correctly is not typically that money appears under your pillow or that circumstances change overnight through pure magic, though Wattles would not rule out even seemingly miraculous shifts when the impression is deep enough, but rather that you wake up with what we might call the golden idea, the urgent impulse, the clear intuition about what action to take next. This is your subconscious mind, having worked all night on the problem you gave it through your single frame, delivering the solution in the form of inspiration, insight, or irresistible motivation. The mistake most people make is expecting the universe to do all the work while they remain passive. Wattles was clear that mental work must be followed by physical action, but not random action, inspired action, action that arises from the subconscious rather than from desperate conscious striving. When you wake up after a night of using the sleep command, pay close attention to the first thoughts and feelings that emerge before you fully engage with the day. These are not random. They are the product of 8 hours of subconscious processing, and they often contain exactly the guidance you need. You might wake up thinking about a person you have not contacted in years, and the impulse to reach out to them feels unusually strong. Follow that impulse, because it may lead to the connection that opens the door to your opportunity. You might wake up with a sudden clarity about a business idea you had dismissed as impractical. Investigate that idea, because your subconscious has found a way to make it work that your conscious mind overlooked. You might wake up feeling an uncharacteristic confidence, a sense that today is the day to make the call you have been avoiding, to ask for the raise, to submit the proposal. Trust that confidence, because it is not delusion, it is your subconscious communicating that the inner work has been done, and you are now ready for the outer action. The morning download is the evidence that the sleep command is working, and it is the bridge between mental causation and physical manifestation. Wattles understood that thought alone without corresponding action produces no result, but he also understood that right action cannot be forced through willpower. It must flow from right thinking, from a consciousness that has been aligned with the desired outcome through consistent impression. When you use the sleep command night after night, you are not merely visualizing. You are reprogramming your subconscious to recognize opportunities, to generate ideas, to produce the impulses that will move you toward your goal through the path of least resistance. This is the law of speed in operation, not faster action, but more efficient action, action that comes from inspiration rather than desperation, action that feels right rather than forced. Modern productivity research confirms this pattern. People who solve problems through incubation, working on them consciously and then sleeping on them, consistently outperform people who try to force solutions through continuous conscious effort. The break provided by sleep is not a loss of time. It is the necessary period for the subconscious to do its work, to process information in ways the conscious mind cannot, and to deliver insights that advance the project more in one night than weeks of grinding effort could accomplish. This is why the most successful people, whether they articulate it in Wattles' language or not, protect their sleep and use the pre-sleep period for reflection and visualization rather than for worry and distraction. They understand instinctively what Wattles taught explicitly, that the night is not dead time but productive time, and the quality of that productivity is determined entirely by what you impress upon your subconscious as you drift into sleep. The golden idea that arrives in the morning is not always dramatic. It might be a small adjustment to your approach, a slight shift in perspective, a gentle reminder to take an action you had been procrastinating. But these small, inspired adjustments compound over time in ways that forced, uninspired action never does, because inspired action is aligned with the deeper currents of cause and effect that Wattles called the movement of the formless substance. When you act on inspiration, you are rowing with the current. When you act from desperation or obligation, you are rowing against it. The sleep command does not eliminate the need for rowing. It reveals which direction the current is flowing and gives you the strength and clarity to row in that direction, rather than exhausting yourself in futile struggle against forces you do not understand. Over time, as you become more attuned to the morning download, you will notice a quality to these insights that distinguishes them from ordinary thoughts. They feel certain, they feel calm, they feel like remembering rather than discovering. This is because your subconscious does not present information with the tentative, questioning tone of the conscious mind. It simply knows, and it communicates that knowing with quiet authority. When you receive such an insight, do not subject it to endless conscious analysis. That is the trap of the how question re-emerging. Simply act on it, test it, and observe the results. Wattles taught that faith is demonstrated through action, and the morning download is your daily opportunity to demonstrate faith in the process you have initiated through your nightly use of the sleep command. The more consistently you act on these insights, the more powerfully they will come, because you are training your subconscious to recognize that you are serious, that you trust its guidance, and that you are willing to be led rather than insisting on controlling every detail through conscious effort. We have journeyed through the mechanics, dissected the method, examined the mistakes and validated the science. Now we must synthesize this knowledge into a unified understanding of what you have actually been given. Sleep, which you have treated as a void, an absence, a necessary inconvenience that interrupts your productivity, is revealed in Wattles' teaching to be not a pause in your existence, but a shift in your production. You are not stopping work when you close your eyes. You are moving from the workshop of physical reality to the design studio of mental causation, from the realm where effects are manipulated to the realm where causes are created. The 8 hours you spend unconscious are not lost hours. They are your most valuable hours, the hours when the formless substance that shapes reality is most responsive to your direction, when your connection to creative intelligence is unobstructed by conscious doubt, and when the seeds you plant have the longest uninterrupted period to germinate without the interference of contradictory thoughts. This reframing of sleep's purpose should fundamentally alter how you approach your entire life. If you truly understand that the night is when causes are set in motion, then the day becomes simply the time when you observe those causes manifesting as effects and take whatever inspired action arises from your subconscious work. You are no longer grinding for 16 hours trying to force outcomes through sheer physical effort. You are working intelligently, using your conscious hours for inspired action and your unconscious hours for creative programming. This is efficiency at the highest level, the kind of efficiency that Wattles called the law of speed. Not because you are moving frantically, but because you are removing the resistance that makes progress slow. When you stop fighting yourself, stop unconsciously programming failure while consciously pursuing success. Stop using 8 hours every night to undo what you built during the day. Your progress toward wealth becomes not just faster, but inevitable. The transformation you are being offered is not merely financial, though financial results will come when you apply these principles with fidelity. The deeper transformation is in your relationship with your own mind, your recognition that you possess a creative instrument of immense power that you have been using either randomly or destructively, simply because no one taught you its proper operation. Wattles' great gift was not to tell you about some exotic secret available only to initiates. It was to reveal that you already possess everything you need, that the power has always been yours, that you have been standing on a gold mine while begging for coins. The sleep command is not a trick, not a hack, not a shortcut. It is simply the correct use of a faculty you have used incorrectly all your life, and the results of correct use versus incorrect use are the difference between wealth and poverty, between expansion and limitation, between living as a creator and living as a victim of circumstance. You have spent years, perhaps decades, believing that reality is fixed, that your circumstances are the result of forces beyond your control, that wealth is something you must somehow acquire from outside yourself through luck or labor or inheritance. Wattles dissolves all of this with a single principle. Reality is malleable. Circumstances are effects rather than causes, and wealth is something you create from within through the correct use of mental impression. The formless substance is not distributed unequally. It is everywhere, always infinitely available, but the ability to mold it into desired form requires understanding how impression works, and the point of maximum impressibility is the hypnagogic state you enter every single night. This means you have been given a daily opportunity, a nightly reset, a chance to begin again regardless of what happened during the day. Every night, you stand at the point of transmission with the power to command the next day's circumstances. And the only question is whether you will exercise that power deliberately or abandon it to the chaos of unconscious habit. The practical implications of this understanding are immediate and radical. Stop grinding for 16 hours and then undoing it all with 8 hours of worry. This is not a poetic exaggeration. This is a literal description of what most people do, and it explains why they achieve so little despite enormous effort. Their daytime actions are constantly sabotaged by their nighttime programming, like trying to fill a bucket that has a hole in the bottom. No amount of working will fill the bucket, create wealth, if you refuse to plug the hole, master your pre-sleep mental state. Wattles is offering you the plug. He is showing you how to stop the leak, how to ensure that every drop of effort you invest during the day accumulates rather than drains away through unconscious negative programming at night. This single shift, taking control of what you impress upon your subconscious before sleep, will do more for your financial future than any external strategy, any business plan, any investment advice, because it addresses causation rather than effects. Master the night, and the day will obey you. This is not mysticism. This is the recognition that nighttime consciousness determines daytime consciousness, that the mental state you wake up with is largely determined by the mental state you fell asleep with, and that your daytime actions, opportunities, and results flow from your daytime consciousness. When you master the sleep command, you wake up different, more energized, more confident, more alert to opportunity, more receptive to inspiration. You show up in the world differently, and the world responds to you differently. Not because the world has changed, but because you have changed the lens through which you perceive and interact with the world. People who feel abundant attract abundance. People who feel lack attract lack. This is not a moral judgment, but a mechanical observation. And the feeling of abundance or lack is not something you can fake during waking hours if you are programming its opposite every night as you fall asleep. The authority to create your circumstances has never belonged to the economy, your employer, your family background, your education level, or any other external factor. It has always resided in the 8 hours you thought were empty, and in the 30 seconds before those 8 hours begin. Wattles is not giving you power you lacked. He is revealing power you have misused, and the revelation itself is the first step toward correct use. But revelation without application is merely interesting information, and interesting information changes nothing. You must apply this tonight, not tomorrow night, not when you feel more prepared, not after you have read more books or understood more theory, tonight. Because tonight is when the formless substance will respond to whatever you impress upon it, and if you do not impress your desire deliberately, you will impress something else by default, and that something else will manifest tomorrow as the circumstances you will then complain about, while failing to recognize your own role in creating them. The challenge before you is simple but not easy. Choose one thing, one specific desire that you want to manifest, and create a single frame that represents that desire fulfilled. Make the frame concrete, make it emotional, make it yours. Eliminate all other possibilities and outcomes from this frame. It is not 10 things you want, it is one thing, because scattered attention produces scattered results. Tonight, beginning 30 minutes before you intend to sleep, execute the digital detox. Turn off every device, eliminate every source of external stimulation, create silence or gentle neutral sound. Use these 30 minutes to quiet your mind, to let the day's mental noise settle, to prepare yourself for the sacred work of impression. When you finally lie down, bring your single frame into your awareness. See it clearly, feel it deeply, and let it be the last thing in your consciousness as you drift towards sleep. Do not strain, do not force, do not try to hold it through effort. Just return to it gently whenever your mind wanders, and trust that even a few seconds of focused impression at the point of transmission is more powerful than hours of distracted visualization during the day. Wake up tomorrow morning and pay attention to the first thoughts, feelings, and impulses that arise. Do not judge them, do not dismiss them as random, do not subject them to excessive analysis. Simply notice them, and, if they suggest an action, take that action. This is the morning download, the subconscious delivering its solution, and your willingness to act on it is what proves your faith and opens the channel for more guidance. Then tomorrow night, repeat the process, digital detox, single frame, sleep command. And the night after that, and the night after that, until the new pattern is established, until the sleep command becomes as automatic as breathing, until you can no longer imagine going to bed in any other way. This is not a weekend experiment. This is a lifestyle change, a fundamental restructuring of how you relate to your own consciousness. And like all restructuring, it requires consistency and commitment. If you want to master the hidden laws of mind that the schools never taught you, that your parents did not know, that society actively suppresses because an empowered population is harder to control than a population that believes itself helpless, then you must go beyond this single teaching. Wattles left an entire body of work, a complete science of mind and wealth creation, and this sleep command is just one application of principles that extend into every area of human experience. Subscribe to the Master's Legacy, not as entertainment, not as casual interest, but as a student hungry for the knowledge that will set you free from limitation. Each teaching builds upon the last, each principle reinforces the others, and together they form a complete system for taking control of your destiny. Instead of being controlled by circumstances you did not consciously create, but unconsciously commanded into existence. The choice is yours, and it has always been yours. Though you may not have recognized it as a choice until this moment, you can continue to use the sleep command unconsciously, allowing worry, fear, and limitation to program your next day, your next month, your next year. Or you can seize control tonight right now and begin using those 8 hours to design the life you want, instead of reinforcing the life you have. Wattles offers you the method. I have offered you the explanation. The application belongs to you alone. No one can do this for you. No one can believe for you. No one can impress your desires onto the formless substance on your behalf. This is your power, your responsibility, your opportunity. The point of transmission opens tonight as it opens every night, and what you send through that point will determine what you receive tomorrow. The universe is waiting for your command. What will you tell it?